Hey guys, what's going on? It's Sean. I think my hair's all messy. Um, I haven't bathed yet today. It's already going on like 3 o'clock, and I just haven't done anything. I'm too tired. But stayed up last night at the country club for the work party and drank a little too many margaritas. So played Texas Hold'em like way too long, then danced, and then went to a country bar called the Maverick, and I'm just like, oh. Just this whole weekend has just been like a big bender. So, anyways, um, I was watching a video just now of this guy's channel I'm subscribed to. His name is Vampire Mike, and he put out. Excuse me, sorry. He put out a video. Actually, put out a couple of videos about his job. I think it was his first job when he worked at GameStop. And I thought about doing this myself, like a factotum type of thing with my channel, where I would tell the story of when I worked at this job, this job, this job, what time in life, what year it was. And so that's what I'm going to be doing for this video. I'm going to be talking about the time that I worked for my very first job in a place in California called Hutch's Car Wash. So it is it was my very first job. I still remember the date because I thought about it while I was at work at my current job now. I thought about it for a little bit when I was throwing out the trash at my new job, because I work at a hospital now. But Hutch's Car Wash, I started there, I believe it was March 17th, or I'm sorry, I think it was March 13th. I'm pretty sure I started on a Monday, it was either March 13th or 17th of 2007. So I was 18 going into 19. And that, so far in the lineage of my life, my time span, that was the longest job I've ever held. I was at that car wash for about 15 to 16 months. I know if you're thinking to yourself, man, like really? Because I'm 29 now, and there's been no point in my life where I've worked at a job longer than about a year and 3 months. And that was my very first job for whatever reason. There were so many different reasons I kept quitting or getting fired from jobs I would get, just not being able to keep them. Except for this time. This time it looks very different. This time it's looking like I'm going to be at this job for the next probably about 10 years or so. Because I had a revelation while standing in line last year at the Fry's. If you don't know what a Fry's is, it's like a Safeway but for poor people. It's like the dollar store but a little better for food. Think of Food City. It's like that. But for the I had a revelation. I had an epiphany when I was standing in line, and I was standing up for so long that I was getting shooting pains in the back of my neck and my jaw, my tongue, and my lower back, because I was standing up on concrete for about 2 hours and about 5-10 minutes. It's roughly about 2 hours waiting in line, thinking, man, I'm just tired of running. I'm tired of living the nomad life. I'm tired of, just because I have a bit of gypsy blood in me, I have to be this way. I have to be crazy. I have to always take odd jobs and only work on my novels, only work on my poetry compilations. And I just said, that's it. That's it for me, man. If I'm going there to buy Santa Maria candles because my brother, he forgot to pay, and I don't even know if we had the money at the time, but he forgot to pay the rent, or not the rent, but the light bill. So while I was there for the job interview, I used like the only $5 I had to pick up candles until they turned our meter back on. And it was pretty bad. For a little while there, it was pretty bad. Anyways, so, excuse me, allergies. So, Hutch's Car Wash. I'm going to have to think about this for a second. I've actually thought about this for a week now because I'm writing about working at that car wash in my new novel that I'm working on. Hopefully the novel's coming out this year. I just released my 5th book, it's completely poetry. So, but hopefully I'm going to be releasing the novel for my 6th book. Anyways, so that's why I was thinking about my life in the workplace recently, and I've been writing about working at that car wash. So it started in 2007. I was about 8 or 9 months out of high school. In my entire high school career, I have not worked. I never applied for jobs or looked for jobs or anything like that. It was one of those things like how it is here in Tucson that work is very hard to come by. I remember specifically going to the Castro Valley Library. I don't know for how many months. I went there almost every day, at least 6 days a week. Back when I was in college, this was 2010, 2011. I applied for over 300 jobs, and the only 2 jobs that I was able to get were both scam jobs. You know, the ones where they say, not like pay under the table type of thing, but like commission work. So, anyways, not to say the car wash was like that, because I made money on tips like here and there, but it was very rare. But it seemed like the situation was so dire in the moment that my mother, and this is way before I had a driver's license and a car, but my mother would, in the mornings, would drive me. This went on for about a week. She would drive me over to the rehabilitation center to apply for jobs. Basically, ex-convicts and ex-drug addicts would use this center a town over to get help with making resumes, filling out applications, stuff like that. They called it the caseworkers would help you. So look for a job. So I had a caseworker. I don't remember what her name was. She's a very nice woman. She helped me put together a resume, even though I'm sure it looked terrible. I did have a high school diploma. I did graduate from high school with the diploma, but you know, if you're a younger person in middle school or high school watching this, you're slowly going to realize when filling out applications for jobs that almost all of them do not care whether you have a diploma or you have a GED. They do care if you don't have either. But if I would have known that coming while I was in high school in California, I would have not worked as hard as I did to get that diploma. I actually had like 20 more credits over the limit that I needed. It was like you needed 225 credits to graduate with a diploma. I had like 240 something because I was at school all day every semester because they made me go into what they call the homework class with I don't remember those teachers' names. But anyways, so it's a little advice for people watching here. It really doesn't matter unless you have a college degree in something, and even then, in California, well, actually, I don't really know exactly how that works right now. I haven't like read about that in economics or finances recently, but it's it's a situation where it just depends on the job, because also I'll be talking about the next job or a couple of jobs after that. One of my first jobs when I came here to Tucson was I worked for a company called AFNI, where I sold Verizon products like TV, phone, and internet. I did that for 6 months. But with that class that I was in, and I've always remembered this, even though it's like now 6 years later, that 3 women in the class of about 27 people were registered nurses. It's like, why are you working at a call center if you went to school to be a nurse? It's because they couldn't find jobs. So, yeah, you know, Here in Tucson, it's like the Raymond Carver life. If you don't know who Raymond Carver is, look him up on Wikipedia. Oh, I thought the computer froze right there. Okay. No. Yeah, it's still going. Okay, never mind. So, anyways, hutches, what you would have to do, or where I was put after getting the interview with the caseworker, and I'm sure I butchered that interview. I'm almost dead positive I screwed it up, but they gave me the job anyways. I think it's because they thought I was mentally handicapped. I technically am, but not. And I think they thought I was like really like severely challenged. I think because that's how the case manager painted it, the picture. Because the guy gave me the job even though I had no experience, and it was I told him it was my first job, and he signed me up, and I was there. Yeah, I was at that job for 15, 16 months, something like that. It's like a year and 3 months. And so what you had to do with this job, it's like the octopus here. Hutches would there would be different sections. So depending on the day or who called out of work, I would either have to go to what we call the vacuums or the vacuum section, or we would go over to well, I call it the hostel area because we had to wear these get-ups that look like the guys from that horror movie Hostel and Hostel Part 2. Because back then I was like really, really into horror films, like legitimately good ones. And so you had to wear the same get-up to protect yourself from getting sprayed with water and the chemical, like the soap chemicals or whatnot. So you had to either do that or the other thing. And so what I did at this job for about 8 or 9 months until I got promoted, then I got demoted, was you kind of had to wear like a dress down suit, like casual business for some reason. You had to wear a black shirt with a white shirt over it that buttons up. With the hat they gave you said Hutch's Car Wash on the hat, with black jeans and black shoes with a black belt. And you couldn't have, and at the time, I was still experimenting with the gothic subculture and just found out about punk music. And so I had a lot of black jello bracelets, I had like 2-3 chains around my neck all the time with crosses, or I used to wear this necklace with the green Wiccan star in it, like the white Celtic magic thing, whatever. And I'd have a bunch of chains coming off my pants that would connect to my wallet. So I put a bunch of wallet chains on, along with other stupid stuff. And I wrap it around my wrist too. But so you couldn't wear any of that until I just started putting on a bunch of gel bracelets and no one said anything. The first day I came into work, my boss, I don't remember what his name was. We're just going to refer to him as the letter G because I actually don't remember his name. But he was a really cool guy. He was really nice. He saw I was wearing this like kind of like it wasn't a studded like punk belt, but it had a bunch of loops in the end of it where you would hook the belt buckle. It's not a belt buckle, but where you hook the belt out, there was a bunch of loops. And he said, yeah, you can't wear that to work. Like he told me like, you got to go to Ross or something and you got to go buy a regular black belt. You can't wear this here. I still ended up wearing it. But air conditioning came on. It's January 6th and I need air conditioning. Anyways, so what you would do with the job is you would either do one of those two things. And there was also people that would wipe the cars up front, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But what I would do, I think it was like the first 6 months I was at this job, there was a line of about 9 spots. And you had to stand in the lines and wait for the cars to come through after the cars paid for the washes. So there'd be this big area where I would stand with my hand on the vacuum, everything would be, it was like really loud, like sucking sounds because it was vacuums, like there was like 9 different vacuum hoses that were connected at the top of these pipes, and this was all outside, right on the corner of the street too. I forgot about that. And so the car would come up, the person would give you the keys, or give me the keys. So very rarely I got a tip, but they just give me the keys, or I tell them to leave the keys in the vehicle, and I would take the vacuum and then start. What you have to do is you would have to go back and forth everywhere in the car unless the customer said, "Don't vacuum this" or "Don't vacuum the trunk." And I would just do that over and over and over and over again. And this was my first job, was the reason as to why I developed back problems, where I assumed, after having a couple of doctors give me a couple physical tests and things like that, that I have a slipped disc in my back. And so basically, also to throw that out there, this was a part-time job. Sometimes it was full-time. It just depended. And how this worked was like a commissions-based job. I'm sure every car wash works like this, but the job would be either part-time or full-time depending on the day and how many how many sales they'd be getting per hour. So if there were not too many cars, usually there weren't, Monday through Thursday, usually it was pretty dead. It did depend, and sometimes, like, if it was a holiday like 4th of July or something, then we would all just go home early. I had to show up at 7:30 every time they opened. So it'd be 7:30 to 5:30 on like Fridays and Saturdays, and like half the time on Sundays. Basically, you weren't allowed to leave until they closed the gate, and then you had to go around and you had to clean up after. For the vacuums, we had to stick like these broom handles into them to make sure that nothing was stuck in there, and then we had to do all these extra chores that had to do with cleaning and organizing, and then we were allowed to punch out. So it was like a back and forth trade when it came to working at the car wash, where half the days of the week I would have I think my days off were like Mondays and Tuesdays. So I worked Wednesday through Sunday. So Wednesday and Thursday, but also the weather depended on how many hours you would be working. So let's say if it was raining that day, there's like almost no customers. So whatever supervisor I had at the time, and I had 4 bosses in between the time span of working there. It turned over 4 different times, and then also went under new management like 9 months into the job. And it was such a terrible decision because that job was terrible. I could not stand working there. But anyways, so if the weather depended on if it was really cold or raining or gray skies, usually my supervisor would come up to me and ask me if I wanted to go to an hour lunch. I usually would say yes. And sometimes I'd just go up and ask him, can I leave? Because I couldn't stand the job. I could not stand doing the job. Even though I was there the reason I was there for so long is because I had a contract I signed for this place called All Pro Wrestling in Hayward, California. I spoke to a man named Roland Alexander on the phone, and me and my friend, my dad, my brother went all down. This was a couple months into the job, and I went all down to the wrestling school to watch a show. I think Gangrel and this guy named Billy Blade was like in the main event. You guys remember Gangrel, the dude who was like the vampire guy from the WWF, and he came out with the Brood with Edge and Christian, and then with the Hardy Boys. And then I signed a contract joining what they called boot camp, APW boot camp, which was also called Hell Week. And it was $3,200 for them to train you to become they train you in amateur wrestling and professional wrestling. They train you in both. We had to shoot on each other during class. So That's the reason I stayed there, because I was scared to death of not being able to pay it, because at the time, the only thing I wanted to do in life was to become a professional wrestler. That's the only thing I wanted to do since I was 5. Ended up becoming a writer and a pastor, but, you know. But sometimes they wouldn't even say, if you want, hey, do you want an extra lunch? Sometimes they wouldn't even bring it up. They would just say, he would go like this, which meant time for you to punch out. You have to go home because we're not getting enough sales for the hour or something like that, or for the day. I remember one time for 2 weeks during December or November, one of those, it was literally raining like almost every day for like 2 weeks. And I called in for 2 weeks straight, because you also had, the other stupid thing about it is you also had to call in about a half hour before your shift started. So I would wake up at like 6 to get ready, call them. If I had to be there by 7:30, which was always my time to come in, I think everyone came in at 7:30, but I actually don't remember that, but I had to come in at 7:30, and I would have to call in, and because the boss told me to call in, he said if it looks like it's going to start raining, you have to call in. So I would do that, and one time for 2 weeks I didn't show up to work because it was just raining almost nonstop, and they didn't need my assistance or help or anything. I used to walk to work also, and I took a bike to work. So after that long, grueling day, sometimes I got to get off early, where I'd work from like 7:30 to like 12. And then they'd say, oh, Sean, we're going to send you in a truck to go wash RVs for like 4 or 5 hours. You have to wipe down all these different RVs in the RV lot, or we're sending you to a different car wash to do assistance as like a goodwill thing to other car washes, it was so bad. Like, it was literally hell. It felt like it was hell on earth doing that. And it always happened on a Friday too. I could not stand that. Basically, they threw me in the back of a pickup truck that was always parked next to the front office with like one or two other guys. Usually is one guy. And at this job, I could not talk to anybody at this job because everybody spoke Spanish. I was the only Anglo-Saxon man working at this job. And very few of the workers I work with, other than the boss's assistant, and one of my supervisors, they were the only ones that could speak English or broken up English to the point where we could understand each other. So, like, everyone would come up, because like everyone that worked there was either Mexican or they were from El Salvador. So, yeah, Salvadorian. And so, like, almost every time I got shipped out on the pickup truck to go wherever, basically to go mop and sweep and clean and stick the broom handle in the thing to try to get the vacuums to work at some other car wash as I'm helping assist with people and basically they had me doing yard work and stuff. And it was like, most of the time, like, if you weren't busting your ass, you got yelled at. It was basically slave labor. They paid me, but everybody there was completely disrespected. If you talk out of turn, if you talk, if, like, if you say, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't feel comfortable doing this, my arm hurts, my back hurts, whatever, like, you basically got in trouble. So I don't think there was one person there that I worked with that legally worked there in California, but it's a sanctuary city, so I mean, it didn't bother me because they were all really gross, but they're really awesome, like really super perverted, vulgar humor all the time. But it was like disgustingly bad at some points. Like, I remember one time I came back from washing RVs, but they sent me like right when I got there in the morning at 7:30. It was a Friday with 2 other guys. And the nickname for me, they call me El Sean, like the Sean, or they call me Quango, which means lazy. And I was like, man, I don't care. I don't. The only reason I'm here is to get money to do this wrestling school because I was living with my parents at the time, just coming out of high school, and that was my only focus. That's why I kept showing up, is because I was scared to death of being left that debt and not being able to go to wrestling school. That's why I put up with so much. I put up with a ridiculous amount of abuse at that job. But one time, I remember, I'll tell you the story. One time, I had to leave like at 7:30. I was sitting in the middle of the pickup truck with two other guys, and we went to like Jack in a Box or something for breakfast. We ate breakfast, and I was feeling terrible because this was around the time period I would not sleep before work because I was so distressed and depressed with the fact of kind of like how I'm feeling now with this new job, where I'm giving so much of my energy, I'm just too exhausted to do anything when I get home, that I wouldn't go to sleep till like 2 or 3 in the morning and then show up for a 7:30 shift. That's what I did when I was 18, 19 years old. Because I didn't want, because I felt like, they're controlling my life, so just a thought process I had at the time working at the car wash. I was dead tired. This was around the time this was before I started having panic attacks. This was before I got diagnosed with anxiety panic disorder. I'm pretty sure what contributed to it was me drinking way too many energy drinks and coffees, because I always get I would, for the most part, get an iced coffee. Most mornings, I walk to 7-Eleven if I had time, and I get a huge iced coffee for work, just so I could keep up with it because I didn't want to sleep. So we go to the RV place. I remember the guy was really nice, the guy who owned the RV place, and we had to wipe down and spray down with soaps and suds and do it like we had to do the wax on, wax off with soap buckets every single RV in that lot. It took about 5 hours to do. We had to thoroughly wipe, and we're talking about the tires, not the undercarriage, but the windows, like pretty much everything. Me and two other guys, that's it. And it took like 5 hours to do. We got back, and I was under the assumption, because the week prior when I got back, the boss's assistant said I could leave. And I was very happy about that, even though my pay got cut for the day. They said it was 12:30, so they said, "Oh, Sean, you can leave." I got back, and I walked up to the guy. I was so exhausted. I was so tired. And I walked up to the guy, like, I literally was like struggling to keep my head up because I was just like everything was just hurting. Like, everything was in pain. Like, my hands and my wrists were hurting, my legs, my knees were, like, everything was hurting. Because we had to also climb on ladders to wash the top of the RVs. So I got back, and the guy says, no, you get back to work. Get over to he was like telling me in Spanish, get over to the vacuums. Like, you're vacuuming till 5 or 5:30. And I just said, okay, and then he didn't even like, I think he didn't give me a lunch break either. Like, I didn't even have a break yet from 7:30 to about, I think it was like 12:30 or 1 when we got back. And then I went and asked a different supervisor if I could take a lunch break. And he said, oh yeah, he was like, oh yeah, you can take an hour break if you want. Because we don't have like that many cars coming in right now. And I was like, well, then why in the hell why can't I just go home then? I don't, like, if I'm making enough to do $300 a month to pay for wrestling school plus food, I can make it work by just working part-time, but they would not let me leave. And I remember I was just like laying against, because we had nowhere to sit for breaks. You can see how great they treated us there. There was no employee room. You had to stand outside or sit outside. But I remember there was this fence where the cars would come in and you'd spray them down after you take the customer's ticket. and there was a fence that would close in on itself, but if you pulled out, that's how you would connect it to close that part of the car wash. And so I sat behind the fence while it was open for the vehicles on this little step stool. I was just sitting there with like a black, I think I had like a deicide like redemption sweater on or something. And I remember I just had my head back against the metal post and I'd be getting hit with the mist while the guy, I forgot his name. I forgot everyone's names there, but he was spraying down the cars and the mist was like hit me as I was trying to sleep. So that was that. Anyways, we're at 30 minutes here, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off. I might make a part 2 to this video because I did not cover a whole lot of other stuff about this job. So much happened at that job, I could probably make like 5 parts to this video, all 30 minutes each. But yeah, this is Sean checking in, just talking about a couple of things about the first job I've held, because I'm writing it for my new novel called Me Inside, and then / my own factotum. Yeah, so go ahead and if you want, go ahead and stay tuned. If you want more stories, go ahead and throw some stuff in the comments there.